This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the show. I am Jason. This is Sports Spectrum, and our website, of course, is sportsspectrum.com. We'd love for you to check that out. Lots of content there, our podcast, articles, stories. We have daily devotionals every day, Monday through Friday, right at the website, sportsspectrum.com. And then you can email me. We love to hear from you with your story ideas, with your guest suggestions. Actually, thinking about this, today's guest, Jed Morris, came from someone who listens to this podcast and emailed me an idea because they had a relationship, a connection with Jed Morris. And lo and behold, Jed is on the show today. So we really do look at these emails and we take your ideas seriously. A lot of them do reach our show, whether it's on the podcast or maybe it's on the website. We write an article, but a lot of the stories that are out there, we rely on you guys to share them with us. So you can email me directly. My email is jason@sportsspectrum.com, jason@sportsspectrum.com. Love to hear from you. Again, you can reach me directly, jason@sportsspectrum.com. We are presented today and thankful for our sponsors and partners, Ronald Blue Trust, applying biblical wisdom, technical expertise to help their clients make wise financial decisions to experience clarity and confidence and leave a lasting legacy. We are now into 2021, and we all want to steward our finances well. And that's really the object of what Ronald Blue Trust, their objective, I should say. It's about applying that biblical wisdom and helping their clients leave a lasting legacy. So check them out at Ronald Blue Trust. ronblue.com is their website. ronblue.com. Ronald Blue Trust. We love them. I think you guys will too. Tell them Sports Spectrum sent you to Ronald Blue Trust. We're also presented today by our new sponsors, Convoy of Hope, a faith-based nonprofit organization with a driving passion to feed the world through children's feeding initiatives, community outreaches, and disaster responses. And right now, they need you to join their starting lineup with their favorite players and teams in partnering with Convoy of Hope to fight hunger, poverty, and suffering in the United States and throughout the world. Check out their website, convoynation.com, to learn more and be a part of a great organization and the great work that Convoy of Hope is doing. convoynation.com. Today on the show, as I mentioned, Jed Morris is our guest today on Sports Spectrum. And Jed is with the San Diego Padres organization. He's a minor league hitting instructor, a minor league hitting coach. He's also a former pro baseball catcher. He was selected way back in the 2002 MLB Amateur Draft, 36th round of the MLB Draft by the Oakland Athletics. He played his college ball at the University of Nebraska. He played in the College World Series a couple times, was the Big 12 Player of the Year, had a really good college career, and came to the pros. And actually, he mentions this. I didn't realize this. When he was selected in 2002 by the A's, that was the Moneyball draft. You guys have seen that movie, Moneyball, or read the book. Well, 2002 was that Moneyball draft, and Jed was a part of that in the 36th round. And his minor league journey took him all the way to AAA in 2005 with stops in Midland, Modesto, Sacramento, Vancouver, Stockton, and independent ball in Lancaster. After he was done with playing, he became a coach, the former head baseball coach at Eastern University. He was 6 seasons there, Division III school, from 2013 to 2018. But this is more than just a baseball story with Jed Morris. This is about survival. See, Jed is a cancer survivor. He had acute lymphocytic leukemia when he was just 26 years old, in the midst of his baseball career. So he tells you that story, trusting God in the process, and really relying on his faith and his life verse, which I won't give away. He'll tell you that in a little bit. And Jed Morris is a great guy. Joins us here today on Sports Spectrum. Take a listen. Jed, welcome to Sports Spectrum. How are you?
Thank you. Very humbled to be here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're glad that you're here. You got a great story. I can't wait to share your journey with our listeners. But let's start with your current role with the Padres. What does it entail? It's minor league hitting instructor, but what does that look like maybe in a normal year? We'll talk about first, and then we'll get to what 2020 was like.
Yeah, so I came on board with the Padres a couple of years ago now. I was coaching college first in the Philadelphia area at Eastern University, small preschool. And my buddy here, Ben Fritz, a guy I played with 5 different seasons in the minor leagues. He was part of the Moneyball draft as well. He was a friend that was working here with the Padres as a kind of coordinator here at the complex in Peoria, Arizona. He let me know of a need for a hitting coach here at the rookie level. And I told him, not to tempt me right now. My wife is actually willing to move away from her home, and she's from Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, and she's willing to move away from there and, kind of adventure out. We have 3 kids, and so I took the opportunity. Some really cool God things happened to let me know that this was the right choice for me. I came out here, and so basically we go through spring training, we go through extended spring training, and then I was helping out with the rookie ball level the last couple of years. So I was basically helping the new guys, a lot of guys from the Dominican or Venezuela, and then we also got the guys that right out of the draft. This is their first professional experience. They're coming in, and they kind of need a little guidance on just how to do their daily routine, how to get things going, how to take care of their bodies, and obviously get their swing in a good place and try to get external, not to overthink themselves. What did they do before to make themselves successful? You're not going to get to the big leagues tomorrow. Just calm it down a little bit, get yourself in a good place. So that's what I've been doing the last couple of years. And then obviously this year was a little different because what happened during spring training sent everybody home. And once that happened, we were just kind of doing some Zoom calls as coaches and then hoping that, at some point we'd be able to pick it back up. And so what happened was we had a late instructional league that happened in October when we would normally be ending instructional league. And so we were able to get some really high quality players in here that really are at the beginning stages of their career still, get them going. And now we've moved into like our winter strength programs and kind of still working on some guys' swings and whatever, but it's a lot smaller group, and we're just hoping to impact whoever we can.
What was March 10th, March 11th like for you? Where were you? That was the day, for people wondering, in 2020, that was the day the pandemic was declared. March 11th, I believe, was the day that baseball shut down the first time, before after spring training 1.0. And then I talked to some major leaguers and they called it spring training 2.0 when it restarted. But what was that like for you, kind of where you were with the Padres at spring training and having to shut everything down?
Yeah, I mean, I think our guys at their higher levels here were doing the best they could. Sam Ganey, our farm director, he was doing the best he could to relay the information. It wasn't always easy for him to kind of figure out what was going to come out from MLB next. So yeah, they just kind of they would have meetings with us and gather us together and make sure that we understood something was about to happen, but we don't know the gravity and we don't know how many people are going to have to go home. And so, yeah, then it turned into one day they were like, all right, everybody needs to meet up in the weight room. The doctor's going to talk to us. They're going to let us know a little bit what's going on. And then we're going to have to send everybody home until further notice. And so, yeah, it was kind of like just kind of an eerie, strange thing. And I remember I had allergies that day, which was probably the worst time to have allergies. I sneezed during that meeting when everybody was together, and it was like a shockwave around me. Everybody was kind of diving out of the way. I was like, guys, I just have have a little allergies, no big deal. But it's pretty funny. So.
Jed Morris is our guest here today on Sports Spectrum. He's the San Diego Padres minor league hitting coach and minor league hitting instructor, former pro baseball catcher. Jed, tell us about your journey a little bit. I have to imagine baseball has been in the blood since you were a little boy.
Yeah. I grew up playing baseball for sure. But what's interesting is that I had nobody else in my family and that played baseball that was really into it. My parents even, they were kind of even new to the sport. They grew up in Ohio. They liked the Reds growing up. And what I found out, though, this past year was that my mom ended up going to the 23andMe thing, and she ended up finding out that her real dad had a brother, Al Lakeman, who caught in the big leagues. He was a backup catcher and ended up coaching in the minor league or in the big leagues as well. He was a bullpen coach for the Red Sox and I think Detroit. So it was a really fascinating thing to see that somewhere in the bloodlines. It is there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I grew up playing and, I was a catcher, and I never understood why I was a catcher. I just thought, I was a little undersized and whatever, but, I enjoyed it. You kind of at some point have to say you love pain just to be a catcher. So you kind of have to trick the mind a little bit. But yeah, it was interesting. My mom, even when I was 8 years old, she said that God told her I was going to have a career in baseball, but she didn't tell me until I was a junior in high school. And I wasn't having like the most out of the world season my junior year of high school. And I thought, when she told me, I think I had a bad game. We were sitting out of Sonic, and she told me like, oh, when you were 8, God told me you'd have a career in baseball. And I started fighting it all like immediately because I didn't think I was going to be good enough because I assumed she meant play in the big leagues. And I was like, well, I got to get a lot better for that to happen. And sure enough, I kept fighting it a little bit. Maybe he meant I'll be a coach or something like that. And she was pretty adamant about me playing and making it to the highest level. So a lot of great things happened. My journey, I wasn't highly recruited out of high school. I went to Tyler Junior College. Got a lot better there. Really appreciated my time with Coach Groth. He was a phenomenal guy working through FCA as well. He kind of helped me in my journey with faith as well. And then I ended up hitting a home run in front of the Nebraska coach during a fall tournament. And Dave Van Horn, brought me in. I really enjoyed the atmosphere and the team concept. They were really on the verge of some great things at Nebraska. And when I went to the Big Red, we went to the College World Series both years I was there. Some more amazing God things happened, between my first year in Nebraska and my second year, I was out in kind of a podunk place playing baseball at Beatrice. And I remember a kid from the Oakland A's ran me over at home plate as a catcher. He ran me over, and I was so mad, not because he ran me over, because it was summer ball. And I thought, I just went from playing in front of like 30,000 people, and now there's like nobody here, and you just ran me over. And my attitude was terrible in that moment. I'll be honest, like I think I was just getting a little bit over my skis, and so I started to think I was better than I really was. But that moment really helped me out. I ended up adding a huge leg kick because I was mad the next at bat, and I hit the ball really hard. And I thought, if I can really contain this. And so going into that next year, I really wanted to make sure the team stayed at that caliber to make it back to the World Series. And I ended up being a Big 12 Player of the Year. Just having like a All-American season, and it really kind of catapulted me into getting drafted in the Moneyball draft 2002. And then I just had my ups and downs in the minor leagues, and eventually in 2006 I had a big screeching halt there with getting cancer, and making my way back from that. I just met a lot of good people, and my perspective obviously changed some, but to get to where I'm at now, I just learned how to, dive into my faith, have a process, and, just try to be the best I could every day.
So let's unpack a little bit of that, what you just mentioned there, because there's a lot. I think the idea of going to Nebraska, growing up in Texas, had to be a little bit of a culture shock for you, going to Lincoln, Nebraska, but then being able to play on a big stage had to be pretty amazing. But you mentioned something about your faith being really encouraged, I guess, or maybe that was a moment for you. So that's where I want to go, is the moment, if you remember the exact moment, but maybe it was a process, like for many, of saying yes to Christ and really understanding who Jesus was, and saying, okay, this faith thing, I'm going to make it my own. Do you remember that? Do you have a time when that actually occurred?
I know growing up, it was encouraged, and I was in a house of we were going to church, and I think when I was 8 years old, I got baptized and I committed my life to Christ. But I think what happened was he just kind of became my rock in a lot of different ways. And I started to just ask for wisdom. I didn't always have wisdom, but I was just asking for it. And I was trying to figure out, how should I be reacting in certain situations? How should I be leaning on Christ in certain situations? And I think what ended up happening is I found a life verse for me that ended up being a very powerful one toward the end of my college life and into my minor league life and until today. But that's Proverbs 3:5-6. And it wasn't just the verse, but it was just the way I was able to use it. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, and all your ways submit to him and he will make your paths straight. But what I ended up doing was I would pause on the word all. And so I would say, trust in the Lord with all. And as I repeated it, I would just try to give absolutely everything to Christ. Like I would just, and it was a process of doing that every day, sometimes 100 times a day, sometimes, just a couple. And if I forgot to do it after a while, I could feel the anxiety. I could feel, different pressures that I wouldn't normally have. And so I think the wisdom for me came in ultimately trusting Christ with everything. And that's still a process, a daily process, having kids now and trying to deal with their emotions and trying to figure things out as a parent. But as a player, there couldn't have been anything better for me to do than to trust the Lord, especially with how things went. I mean, it was like an up and down thing, being in baseball in general, but my career and the way things went. I really, and especially thinking that I was supposed to be in the big leagues, like I was on a track to eventually be in the big leagues, I thought. And so when things come up like cancer and like different injuries or whatever, and I always thought like, all I can do is just trust in the Lord with all my heart and with all of these things. And so that process over time has really helped my relationship with Christ. Eventually it's led to me, when I got the job here with the Padres, I've been hearing from God a lot more than I ever have, as far as looking for him to talk back to me. I'm not just talking to him, but I'm really listening more than I ever have. And doing that listening has really helped me start to see things like that I would have never seen, and the connections that I've made and the different people in my life. So it's been a huge deal, and it's helped me be a little more vocal, because I was always a quiet leader and somebody who's trying to figure it out. And now I'm able to start speaking it a lot more, and I'm just seeing it a lot better.
Well, I love that verse. It's actually one of my life verses as well. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Well, he made your path from a worldly perspective. It didn't look really straight, Jed. When you look back, obviously it's much more straighter than than when you're going through it. But your path took you. You mentioned the Moneyball draft, that 2002 MLB Amateur Draft. You were in the 36th round. You were taken by Oakland. That's a long time to wait. What was that day like, or days, I guess? What were your memories of being selected by Oakland and coming to a major league program?
Well, I mean, so for me, I think it all kind of came down to, I had gotten to a point where, and I actually just gave a talk the other day at Arizona Christian University. They did a little Southwest baseball conference, and Joe McDonald is doing a great job there. And he asked me to come talk, and I actually talked about internal versus external views of yourself and when you're playing, and how that internal view is important. It's kind of a selfish stage as a baseball player. You kind of need that stage to figure out your own process and your own goals, but then you need to get like external as fast as possible. And so tying that in here is where, in Nebraska, there was nobody above the team. It was such a great culture that they had established. Coach Anderson, Coach Van Horn, Coach Childress, like they had established this culture of like, no one's above the team. Your numbers don't matter if we're not winning, like everything needs to be toward the same goal. And so that really helped me get external. I wasn't thinking about my own career, wasn't thinking about my own pressures of what I need to do to make it somewhere. And I think out of that, I became such a better player. And it's the same in our relationship with Christ. Like we got to get external as fast as possible. We get to take it in, we get to kind of wrestle with it, and then we need to get it external as fast as possible. So getting drafted a little late, I was a little bit like, I was watching the draft the first day, and I was like, all right, if I'm not drafted before the Texas Longhorn catcher, then I'm, I was Big 12 Player of the Year. I felt like if I wasn't drafted the first day, then I'm just going to kind of turn it off, and whatever God has for me, I'm willing to come back. I had a redshirt year. I still could come back to Nebraska. So, but when they called me up, They asked me if I would sign for a small amount of money. And, I just had it in my head that I had a career in baseball. It was like something that I was supposed to be pursuing. And so I jumped at the chance to go ahead and sign. And I didn't know it was the Moneyball draft. No one knew at that time, that wasn't the label. So it just happened to be where I walked in a locker room with, Nick Swisher and Joe Blanton and Ben Fritz. And actually Nelson Cruz was on our rookie ball team, or our short season team. So I walked into a locker room with a lot of great personalities and interesting personalities, and it was a great team, great organization to be with. Obviously, I was so happy to be with them, and I felt like I had a really good shot. If I could make it with the A's, it was because you're a good player. There wasn't a whole lot of extra fluff that goes on with being with the A's. Like if you're a good player, they'll figure out a way to promote you. Usually, that's just how it goes. So I felt good about that.
What did you think of the movie? I love the movie Moneyball. I just watched it recently, by the way, during the pandemic, and you have some downtime to watch a lot more movies. And I hadn't watched it in a few years, and it's really, really good. But I didn't live through that. A movie is always Hollywoodized, if you will, but it seemed to be pretty accurate. What were your impressions of watching that movie?
Yeah, it was very entertaining. I really enjoyed it. I think, it really kind of created a voice for people that weren't necessarily baseball background people. And they were finding a way to interject into the game and see things in a different way. And I really enjoyed the concept of it because it's all about the team and how do we put numbers together that makes a good team instead of, who can we just go get the best player. I thought it was really creative, just the whole concept. But then I think in the movie, it's interesting. Like I heard rumors about Billy Beane during games, how he would get so stressed out or didn't want to watch the game, or, he would go lift weights, and they kind of indicated that in the movie as well. And I think that's pretty accurate from what I've heard. But yeah, I think, it's so fun to see something like that kind of become a trend. Other teams kind of try to pick up on that and say, all right, well, I guess on base percentage, must be such a big deal. And, it's just funny. It's kind of like rebranding baseball in some ways, but ultimately it's just, how do we make things work with a little bit, make as much good out of a little bit that you can. And I think that was really cool to be a part of, to know you were a part of something like that, where they didn't care who you were. If you could make something good happen, they'll try to make it work.
A quick break to tell you about our new partners and sponsors today, Convoy of Hope, a faith-based nonprofit organization with a driving passion to feed the world through children's feeding initiatives, community outreaches, and disaster responses. And right now in the U.S. and throughout the world, countless families are living on the fringe or have fallen into the depths of poverty and suffering. But you can make a difference. And right now, we need you to join the starting lineup with Convoy of Hope and join your favorite players and teams in partnering with Convoy of Hope to fight hunger, poverty, and suffering in the United States and throughout the world. And in doing so, you can advocate, give, network, and volunteer to help ensure that those in need receive hot meals, groceries, haircuts, health and dental screenings, hygiene kits, shoes, clothing, family portraits, and much more. You can learn more right now and be a part of the great work Convoy of Hope is doing by visiting them at their website, convoynation.com. You can donate, you can pray, and be a part of all that Convoy of Hope is doing by, again, checking out that website, convoynation.com, CONVOY nation.com. We're also presented today by our friends at Ronald Blue Trust. Their advisors applying biblical wisdom and technical expertise to help clients make wise financial decisions to experience clarity and confidence and leave a lasting legacy. We all have questions about our finances. Where do we go? What do we invest in? How much do we spend? How much do we save? Ronald Blue Trust has all of those answers. They offer comprehensive financial services and objective advice to over 9,500 clients across the wealth spectrum in all 50 states. You can reach them at ronblue.com. That's their website, ronblue.com. Tell them Sports Spectrum sent you. Ronald Blue Trust. You can trust them. We trust them. Check them out. Biblical Principles, Wealth Management Strategies, ronblue.com. Jed Morris is our guest here today on Sports Spectrum. Your baseball journey brought you to the A system, as we talked about, and you made it all the way to Double A, but it was in 2006, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, where baseball had to take a back seat. You had a cancer scare. Can you tell us what happened there?
Yeah, I remember toward the beginning of August, or I guess maybe the end of July, I was kind of coming back from a broken bone in my hand, and it took a little bit longer to come back from than I thought it would. I had started the season, I was doing really well. I was hitting over 300. I think I had 6 home runs when I broke my hand. And so when I was coming back, I thought I'd kept myself in good shape. And I ended up feeling really tired first. That was like the first thing. I was like, man, I never feel this exhausted. And I know it's summertime and whatever, but I thought maybe I just wasn't in baseball shape. I needed to get myself back into it. And so I just kept feeling really tired. And then I got these really nasty bruises on my arm when I got hit by a pitch, and then I blocked the ball in the dirt. My whole right side of my body was like bruised up worse than I'd ever seen. And it didn't look right. And the trainer kind of thought, that's something that he's never seen before. And, maybe I was anemic. Maybe I needed to eat more red meat. I remember eating like an extra meatball on my spaghetti or whatever. Like I was like, all right, well, I'll just try to fix it, and then my nose started bleeding for a couple of days straight. Like I was playing outfield again. I was back playing, and I would kind of blow my nose into the trash can, and it was just like, wasn't clotting the way it was supposed to. It wasn't normal at all. And I thought, all right, this is really strange. We probably need to check this out. So I remember we traveled, where were we? We went on the road from Midland to Springfield, Missouri. We were at the Double A's for the Cardinals place, and the doctor from their team ended up coming over, checking me out. He also confirmed it could be anemia, but I think he went and told our manager, Von Hayes, that it could be leukemia and that he needed to take me out of the lineup for that day. So the next morning I went to the hospital, the local there, and got a blood test, went back to the hotel, waited around. They said, okay, you need to come back to the hospital. And then that's when it all started. I remember the nurse, it was a male nurse, and he came in the room when he was kind of setting me up in the room. He's like, hey, have you ever thought about doing anything else besides baseball? And I was like, yeah, sure. I have all sorts of ideas, but if I'm healthy, I might as well keep playing. And so he didn't like really say anything else. He just kind of was leading in with that. And I was like, obviously something's going on. And then, they told me it was acute lymphocytic leukemia. The A's were super great. They flew me. My parents were living in Georgia at the time. They flew me to Jacksonville, Florida, the Mayo Clinic, and I started treatments. I was in the hospital for, I think, 19 days doing my first cycle of chemo. And before I got out of there, I was back on the bike, kind of in the room there, riding on the stationary bike and trying to get myself back. But it knocked me down pretty good.
Well, you're 26 years old and you find out that you have cancer too. I mean, there has to be a emotional toll that you have to go through and process there too, right? I mean, because you're a baseball player, and athletes, are certainly talking to athletes on the highest levels of pro and in different sports, they pride themselves on being availability, and yet here you are walking through a cancer diagnosis, a leukemia diagnosis at 26, and not even seeing this coming. What was that like to process that news and kind of walk through that?
Well, I kind of compared it to a few different things. I remember I tore my Achilles tendon in junior college, and that was after I had signed with Nebraska. So I actually showed up to Nebraska with like half a calf. And so it was like, it never really grew back either. It was kind of a strange thing, but it was with the Achilles. It was like, I knew there was a certain time when I was going to be coming back. And so it was like, all right, just work your way back. And with cancer, it's not like you can just work your way back. Like you got to trust the doctors, you got to trust the medicine. There's not really necessarily like a time frame. It's not like a 9-month, thing where you're going to be back and ready to go. So the unknowns, in some way, the unknowns actually, let me just sit on my faith. Like I was just able to rely on my faith completely, because it almost like was a relief in some ways, because there wasn't any work I could do. It was like, all I have is my faith. Like all I can do is say, God, like I know I'm supposed to have a career in baseball at this point. Like there's so many things that have happened for me. And I was in Double A tearing it up. I thought, like the next step was, just continue to move up. So I was almost like smiling more just because of the fact that, like, how are you going to turn this into a great story, God? Like, I don't understand what's going on right now, but I know that I'm supposed to be where I'm supposed to be. And what is supposed to play out with this? And so I was kind of relieved in some way, because there was nothing I could do other than just sit there and trust and know that, something good was going to come out of it. So that's kind of where my mindset was. I was like, whatever I can do, if I can get out of bed and start walking around the neighborhood and do all that stuff, then I'll do it. But there's nothing else I can do on a large scale.
That was the same cancer, I guess, or battle that John Lester had too. You were telling me around the same time too, right?
Yeah, really similar. I remember being in the hospital and seeing him on TV, and they announced it, and he was going through his stuff, and it was a very promising diagnosis for him, and all that, and that was very encouraging for me to see a guy at that high a level have an encouraging diagnosis that he would be able to come back and play at that high level. And so certainly that was something that I expected to do. I just thought, like, let's take the medicine, let's get this thing over with, and I'll be back at it. And so fortunately, yeah, our paths were pretty similar. I was through with my last treatment in December, and I think he was the same way after starting in August. And he got back a little bit quicker than I did, because I did come back in 2007 the way he did, but I then ended up breaking my hamate bone, and they were like, all right, Jed, let's just take the rest of the summer off and then come back full strength the next year. So that's kind of how it varied there. But it was a good path of, like, trusting that process of coming back. And they said I looked better than I thought I would in extended spring training in 2007. And I thought that was really encouraging as well.
I'm wondering, obviously we're talking here, it's 2020, 2021, and you're still doing well. So how are you health-wise? Have you not had any issues? Do you get checkups, or is that pretty much it after the chemo?
Yeah, so there was a period there where I needed to get a blood test, I think every 6 months at the least. And then it was kind of tapered out to a year. And then they say after 10 years, you're pretty much in remission for life. If it ever came back, it would come back with a vengeance, basically. So 10 years is kind of the marker where, you should feel pretty good. And so, yeah, that was 2016. I was after 10 years there. And, it's since then I haven't had to check on it as much. I'll get the routine checkups here with the Padres and stuff and all that. But a couple of things happened where I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to have kids. Chemo can wipe you out that way to make you, where you just can't have kids. And I have 3 kids, and I feel like they're miracles. And my wife was actually, when we first met, she was okay with adopting right away. She's like, I think scared of childbirth, She was like, oh, I think, if we have to adopt, that's okay. And then I was like, oh, we had a 2-year plan after we got married. It's like, maybe we'll try to have kids. And then 2 months later, we're pregnant. And so we got pregnant right away. Yeah. And so, yeah, so then, there's other things. Like, I didn't know all my vaccinations would be kind of wiped out from chemo. So I ended up having to get all those again here when I got with the Padres. They told me that I needed to start all over, basically. So it was interesting with that as well.
That's a lot of needles. I'm not too excited about that. I'm sure you weren't either. Yeah,
it was interesting.
Jed Morris has been joining us here on Sports Spectrum. This has been a great conversation. I just want to ask you a couple more questions here, because it was 33 when you became the head baseball coach at Eastern University, and kind of your pro career had ended. You didn't make it to the majors, but you got all the way to AAA in 2005 was your last pro baseball year. So what was that adjustment like to accept that pro baseball was done, and you're still young at 32, 33. I mean, you're young now at 40, but you're still young at 32, 33. So what was that adjustment like for you, going from playing to then coaching and being at Eastern University?
Yeah. So in 2005, I did get 1 game in AAA. It was an awesome story. I'll have to tell it to you another time, but it was amazing. But then I ended up, when I did make it back in 2008, backing up in AA, I ended up meeting back up with Ben Fritz, the guy that I have a connection here with the Padres. He was playing with Vaughn Hayes, who I had a history with when he was my manager when I got cancer. And so he was actually managing in the Atlantic League. So I ended up playing for the Lancaster Barnstormers. I had a great time there. They have a great booster club, and I just really enjoyed my time. And so I finished out my career 2009, and then 2010, I finished up. And the transition was I had met my wife while I was playing in Pennsylvania there. And so we ended up getting married in 2011, and I stayed there in the area. And I didn't know what I was going to necessarily do with my life. I was like, all right, well, am I supposed to have a career in baseball? I'm kind of actually, a little bit jaded and tired of baseball at this point. It's been such a grind. And I didn't know where I was going to be going with my life. And I was like, you know what, I'll just take whatever side job. And my wife had actually gone to Eastern University. She had a friend working on campus in the mailroom, mail and copy center. And I was like, you know what, he had a job opening, and I'll just take that. I'll just do that for a little while, and I'll figure out what I'm going to do. I ended up coaching a freshman team at Haverford High School, and it was a lot of fun. Just kind of went out there and had fun with baseball again. And then ended up finding out that the baseball job was open there at Eastern, and ended up having a good conversation with the athletic director. And they asked me some really big questions. I told them how I would run a program, all that kind of stuff. And we ended up hiring me that day. And Monday I started fall practice. So it was a really quick transition. I just tried to use my competitiveness and whatever practices I had been in the past. And I learned a ton through a lot of mistakes and a lot of things. I got better as my 6 years went on in Eastern, but had a lot of fun. I'd love to see the guys grow in their competitiveness, grow in their just confidence. I really enjoyed the game, and obviously adding in the faith aspect was such a fun thing for me to do openly, and just to do it every day. To talk to the players about life and faith and all that stuff was such a great thing for me. So that transition obviously carried over, and how I view baseball. I think as a player, you kind of view baseball as like, if you think of the actual baseball, you think of like, all right, the leather is like the main part of a baseball, and they have the seams. I would say like baseball was the main part of my life, with the leather, and then the seams were just kind of like my relationships and everything else that came along with, playing the game. And now it's completely flipped as I transitioned from a player to a coach. Like, relationships are the main part of my life, and that's stuff that I think Christ has really shown me as well. Is that the leather of a baseball? That's the main, and then baseball is just kind of the seams, like holding it all, kind of bringing people together, holding people together a little bit. But the relationships are the most important part, and that's really helped me in my view of what my job is now.
I love that. That's a great analogy, and it paints a good picture on how we can get kind of caught up in worldly things when it's really about the relationship, specifically the relationship with God. That's the most important. All right. So I don't have a lot of time, but give me the Cliff Notes version of that AAA game, because you can't just tease that and leave our listeners. They're like, tell me, I got to hear about this game. What happened? So give us the Cliff Notes version on what happened in that AAA game.
All right. Well, I was at Stockton, California, and AAA is down the road in Sacramento. So I think the game started around 11 a.m. and they woke me up at 10 a.m. and it takes 45 minutes to get there. So I had to rush to the field. They were waking me up, so I didn't completely understand what they needed. They needed a bullpen catcher and a DH. Okay. Because there was like 6 guys that had gotten sick. And so I rushed to the park, get my stuff, and I zoomed up to Sacramento. The game had already started when I pulled in. The security guy was like, "Hey, who are you?" And I was like, "Jed." He's like, "All right, let's go." So I had to run in there, and there was a guy sick on the couch. He's like, "Hey, let the pitcher hit in the 9-hole. He's already slotted in there because you weren't here yet." He's like, "Give him an at bat." And I was like, "I'm just here doing whatever they tell me to do, man. Like I can't, So I rushed out. The inning ends, so my at bat didn't come up yet. I got to hit a little bit in the cage, and then I ran down and ended up striking out my first at bat. And that pitcher let me have it because he's like, "I could have done that, man. Like, just let me have it." But then I ended up having a great game. Like, I ended up having a single, a walk, and a sac bunt. But the crazy part was I had to run in between my at-bats all the way to the bullpen, which was in the outfield, to warm up pitchers and then run back and be the DH in the 9-hole. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of great times there. But, it's a good experience and just part of the story. So.
Well, we could do a whole nother podcast just on minor league stories, I'm sure, because there's so many great minor league stories from anyone who I've talked to who's played in minor league, even more in some cases that are fascinating to me than those stories in the majors, because it's such a grind going through that minor league baseball journey. Jed, this has been great, man. Thanks so much for being here on the show. Let's make sure we get you back. We're glad that you're healthy, and so glad that you were able to share your story with us here on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jason. Love to come back.
And many thanks to Jed Morris, the San Diego Padres minor league hitting instructor, for joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. In talking to Jed after the interview, we didn't get a chance to talk about some of the work that he's doing, and one of those involves a camp that is a pretty cool, neat idea that he's a part of. And check it out at runhomecamps.org, runhomecamps.org. I promised him I would mention that. We didn't get a chance to talk about that during the conversation, but you can learn more at runhomecamps.org. Jed Morris is a great guy. He's got a great story, and he had a lot more stories to tell, and we'll have him back on sometime and share some more, especially that minor league story of his one and only AAA game, which I thought was just the epitome of minor league baseball and what that life is truly like. You always got to be ready, because you never know when your opportunity is going to come. Many thanks to Jed for joining us today on the show. All the best to him. We thank you for listening as well. We really do. Every time you hit play, it means so much to us, and sharing this podcast with someone else is really what helps get the word out on all that we're doing here at Sports Spectrum. So we are grateful to you, the listener, for tuning in and really just engaging in the content that we're making and producing here at Sports Spectrum. 2020 was a banner year, our best year yet. And 2021 is certainly a year where we have a lot of high expectations as we continue not only with Sports Spectrum's podcast, but with the Sports Spectrum Podcast Network as we grow our slew of shows, which right now we have Recalibrated with Mallory Brown and Table 40 with Matt and Leslie Holiday. They do a tremendous job. And this show, and we got more shows coming down the pike in a month or two or three. You're going to see a bunch more shows coming through the Sports Spectrum Podcast Network, and we are just excited to continue to bring to you this content that reaches the intersection of sports and faith. That's what we're about, bringing Jesus back into the conversation. So we are grateful to you, the listener. We're also grateful to our sponsors today. Many thanks to Ron Blue and Ronald Blue Trust, applying biblical wisdom, technical expertise, and helping their clients make wise financial decisions. And we all want to experience that clarity and confidence that can help us leave a lasting legacy. That's what Ronald Blue Trust is all about. You can learn more by going to ronblue.com, ronblue.com. Also, thanks again to our new friends, our new sponsors, Convoy of Hope, a faith-based nonprofit organization with a driving passion to feed the world through children's feeding initiatives, community outreaches, and disaster response. Check them out at convoynation.com. We're so excited to have them on board here with us at Sports Spectrum. Convoynation.com, Convoy of Hope. Thanks for listening again, and we really do appreciate you. And we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.